Um, welcome to all of you here live. Welcome to all of you in Zoom. Thank you for coming to week 7 of Gardening on the Wildside. This is all about the design process. So we're looking at putting together all the bits of we've been working on over the last few weeks, putting it down on paper and combining it into a coherent plan. We are under the shelter of the outdoor classroom, which, because of the weather, and all of this is down near South Coogee, and this is Gadigal and Bidjigal land, and so I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. And Steve Batley, our elders. Not that old. Not. So Steve Batley is our landscape architect and expert permaculturalist and presenter of this course, and I'm Julian, the sustainability educator here. Okay.
All right, so here we go. Last week, what did we do last week? Mulch. Pretty much. That sums it up really nicely. Yeah. Soil prep, mulch. Pull the weeds out, cover the weeds over, and mulch. But I want to go back even further for this session. So this week's about design. So we're going to run through the design process. Designing a space for anything is a process. So the first thing we'll do before we get into that, so we'll do a bit of a recap of since the very beginning of the sessions. And then we'll look at the design process, and then I'll just run you through the process for our site here. And then we've got 3 new plants to look at. So that's the flow of today. So think back to the very first, I think it was the first week or the second week, we were looking at soil and how, no we weren't, there was one week there where we were looking at how an ecosystem is built. We looked, another week we looked at native bees, we looked at birds, we looked at frogs and lizards. So we'll start with soil organisms. So the life that lives in the soil. Write down as many things as you can think of that you can do or have in your garden to create habitat for soil organisms.
And if you're on Zoom, feel free to put it into the chat.
Yeah. So what we'll do, we'll write them down, and then we'll all share our ideas. So start with soil organisms. I'll give you 1 minute for soil organisms. Is that kind of working for you guys on Zoom? It's hard to know.
I'm not sure what the question is. Is it listing the names of the organisms?
No, so listing, just write down the things that you can include in your garden or in your space to encourage and provide habitat for soil organisms. Very careful. All right, so that's soil organisms. Now we'll do the same thing. Write down the things that you would include in your garden to provide habitat for native bees. Give that another 10 seconds for native bees. Now 30 seconds for writing down all of the things that you would include in your garden to provide habitat for birds, native birds. give it a bit longer because there seems to be quite a rich seam of ideas flowing here. Oh, good to go. Yeah, okay, now a couple more. Same thing for frogs and lizards. So things that you would include in your garden to provide habitat for frogs and lizards. Yeah.
They're illegal. They're like royalty.
Are they? It's such a present.
Winston Churchill. Now we're talking about habitats for birds.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they
In
want to
tree.
make sure we've got just a
Plant huge crater.
Kookaburras. Okay, our last one. There's one more. So, write the things that you would include in your garden to create habitat for yourself.
I like that.
And your friends and your family, the humans.
Shade and bench, food.
All right. That's probably a good start. Okay, so we'll quickly go through. If I'm going to write some of these down. So we'll start at the beginning. Do you guys want to share, you guys and you guys on Zoom, just throw some things at me that you would include in your garden to create habitat for soil organisms? And we'll write them down. Fungi. Yeah, so the fungi is a soil organism. What can you?
Leaf litter.
Yeah, leaf litter.
vegetable scraps.
Yeah. So put all those in organic matter. Yeah.
I said like acacias, they're pioneers and they're good for nitrogen fixing bacteria.
Yep.
Dead animals.
Dead animals. What? How does that create habitat for.
Blood and bone.
Yep,
Fertilizer.
that's an interesting one. Yes.
Logs.
Yeast. Yeah, so yeast is one of the organisms. How can you create habitat for those? What are some things you would include? Moisture. Moisture, mulch. Anyone on Zoom got something to add?
Rotting logs.
Rotting logs.
Rocks.
Rocks. Yeah. Okay, what about, what was next? Bees, I think, was next on the list. What's some things that you can include to encourage bees, to create habitat for bees?
Blue flowering plants.
Yeah, I'll just say flowers. Yeah.
You want diversity, so you've got flowers throughout the year.
Diversity, flowers all year. Yeah.
Logs.
Logs. Yeah.
Water.
Water. In the form of,
Heavily cool.
yeah, a pond.
Cooling. Some
Filter. Someone on Zoom?
Did we actually say bricks so they could use those little holes to build nests? Was that for bees?
Yeah, they will. Yeah, they'll. Some bees will. Well, they'll burrow in. Yeah, they'll create their homes in holes in things, in hollows. Yeah. Anything else for bees?
Just some temperature regulating things. Enough foliage, I guess.
Yeah. So shade.
Yeah, shade.
Yeah. Okay. What about bees? Some of the key things for bees, birds. We just did birds, bees, birds. Birds. Was that one? Trees.
Yes,
Layers.
spiky plants.
Bushy understory.
Layers of plants. Spiky, yeah.
Yeah, dense, spiky bushes.
Spiky, dense bushes.
Water baths, bird baths.
Yeah. Pond, bird bath. Yeah.
I said tree hole.
Tree holes, the hollows. Hollows in trees. Yeah.
Flowering plants and
Flowers. Yeah. That was, yep.
But be careful. I'm looking for the showy ones because they often attract the bullies.
Ooh, yeah.
So you want more stuff.
So we'll say small, subtle flowers. Yeah. Anything else?
Cobwebs next.
Ooh, cobwebs. Cool. Anyone else? Anything else you want to add for birds?
Did we say
Okay, what about lizards and frogs?
Rocks.
So rocks.
Different sizes.
Yeah. Frog pond. Yeah, frog pond.
Lots of leaf litter.
Leaf litter.
I guess a sunny and warm spot.
Yep. Sun. And also, I guess, shade as well.
Escape routes.
Oh, yeah. What's that one? So that was escape routes out of the pond.
layers if you're hunting? Plant beautiful layers.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. What about for you? What's some of the things that you put down for humans, for yourself, for your habitat?
Grass area.
Grass, maybe a lawn.
I've got a nice stone log or bench to sit on.
Seats.
Mozzie spray.
Mozzie spray.
Shady trees.
Yeah, shady trees. Sorry.
Hang of shade.
A shed. We need a shed, of course. Yeah. Compost bin. Maybe a couple more from Zoom. It'd be,
Tools.
sorry.
Some tools.
Tools.
Ian, you might want to provide your contra suggestion.
Ian.
I thought it was a privacy screening using trees and shrubs.
Yeah, privacy. Screening. Yeah, one more. Paths. Put some paths in there.
Oh, yeah.
Tree house.
Bill's voice.
Edible plants.
Yeah, food. Okay, we'll stop there because we probably could go on for quite a while. So, interesting. So now I just want to introduce you to the design process. So design is a process, and what we just did was one part of the design process, and I'll get to that part because it will kind of flow. So I don't know if you guys, can you guys see that? So I don't know if you remember back in the first week, I think, or the second week, we did a little bit of a process. We did a site analysis, which is the third thing on. I'll start at the top. So first step of the design. Well, they don't have to happen in linear order, but one thing you might want to do, and we did it briefly, is a thing called a design philosophy. So the overarching reason why you're doing what you want to do, or your overarching vision. So it's just all about some sort of written statement about what it is that you're trying to achieve. So that's the design philosophy, and it's kind of a useful thing to have, because you can look back on it as you go down the track. So I think we did do that. I'm not sure if the Zoom is that, I can't remember, but a design philosophy. So for example, my garden, your design philosophy could be, I'm going to create as much habitat for as many animals as I possibly can, and that's all. That might be all you need. Or it might be, I want my garden to look fantastic, have flowers all year, and have frogs. So whatever it is, it's personal, but it's a good idea to have some sort of thing going on. The second thing you might need is to do a design is a mud map, so a base plan of the space that you're working with. It can be really just something like that, really simple, just a freehand quick sketch, or it could be you could engage a surveyor to do a detailed survey of your property, or invest a bunch of money and have a scale drawing in electronic form, which is what I use when we're designing. So, but this is enough. So it's something that you can work with to create your design on top of. The third thing, site analysis. Can you remember what we did for the site analysis out here? Is the process? What sort of things were we looking at?
The sun and the wind.
The sun, the wind,
Whatever's
water.
here already.
Yeah, whatever's here, whatever you notice. So that process. The site analysis is a drawing that you produce that has all the information on it, but the process to create it is a really important process of observing what's on site, what's going on, how does it feel, where's the wind come from, what's your soil like, are there any existing animals that you want to protect, and so I can't stress how important that process is, that process of observing and understanding before you do anything at all. Because there's lots of occasions where if you just jump in and change everything, you could be actually destroying habitat and you don't even know it. So just take your time, observe. So that's the site analysis process, is reading the landscape. We talked about looking at where you are in the bigger picture. So Google Earth is a really good resource to look from above at your garden in the context of the broader landscape. So there may be other patches of habitat around that you can connect to, part of the site analysis. Step 4 is the wish list, which we just did. So it's a really good wish list. So this is a wish list based on everything that you've learned in the last six or 7 weeks. So it's really just writing down, and it's what the important part of the process is actually doing the writing down of it, because otherwise it just you forget. So write down all of the things that you'd like to have in your garden, and it could include all of these things down to cobwebs, hollows in trees, and don't forget to include your wishes as well, because it's, you know, then you may be happy just to close off your garden and never go in there, and that's probably great in terms of habitat, because humans are very we're disruptive. We kind of scare things away. But you probably won't. So you'll be engaging with the garden. So it's all about you as much as your habitat, as much as habitat for everything else. So there's your wish list. The fifth step in the process is a thing that we call a reality check. So your wish list could be as long as your arm. Just write, you know, it's a dream, right? Write it down. But then you have to filter it through the real world. So you may not have the scope in your space to have everything off your wish list. I reckon we could. I think we could achieve this wish list over here. It's something to aim for, and you could probably achieve it at home as well. But you know, maybe on your wish list is I don't know, a tennis court and a paddock with horses in it, and it's not going to really work in Randwick. But that's the idea. So throw your dreams and your wishes, but then maybe we pair it back to reality. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Any questions? Any Zoom questions, comments? Okay.
So just with the site analysis, when we did that before, and I used Google Earth for ours, I found that it was at least a couple of years out of date.
Yeah, it can be.
So for,
Yeah.
local developments and things.
Yeah. Yeah. So just check. Yeah, Google Earth can be a bit old, but it can update fairly regularly as well, depending, I guess where you are.
Does it tell you on Google Earth when you're into particular?
I'm not sure. Does anyone know?
But I could just tell. That
Yeah, I know. I was wondering if there's anywhere where it tells you.
Yeah.
I think it does. Yeah.
I know down the bottom of the image there's a copyright and a date, but whether that's just the current date or whether it's actually when the image was taken, I'm not really sure. I mean, you can get current aerial photographs, but you got to pay for them. So. But anyway, Google Earth is more the big picture context, I guess. But yeah, just check that it's in date. All right, so that's so we spend a lot of time in design actually. It's what I call the information in stage. So there's a lot of reading, bringing information in before you actually get to the stage of producing anything that even remotely looks like a design. And that's all those steps. So design philosophy, mud map, site analysis, wish list, and reality check. And then we move on to actually thinking about the design. Once you've got all the grounding and all the information, you know what things that you want to include, then you start to do some designs. And there's the next stage in the process is what we call concept design. So it's broad brushstroke kind of laying out of the landscape. And this is one way to do it. There's always a million ways to, what is it, skin a cat? Is that what the saying is? Or I don't know. There's another saying which is less offensive to cat lovers, but this is a way. This is a process that you can follow that can be successful. I'm sure every designer has their own process, but this is quite this can be effective. So permaculture has lots of principles that you can follow. Now, one of the principles that permaculture has is from patterns, design from patterns to details. So you could look at the concept design is like the broad patterns that you'd like to create before you actually get into the nitty gritty of thinking about which plants you want or where you want to put things. So I like to use, once you've got your base plan, use some sort of semi-transparent material. It's a nice one because it's yellow. It feels like you've done something before you've even done anything. Because staring at a blank piece of paper is just horrible in your design. But you could just use kitchen, whatever it is, wax paper or kitchen baking paper. I don't know if you guys, do you want to, without getting close to each other, maybe we could kind of come around and have a look, see. So I'll just quickly, I haven't got any site analysis information on here, but from memory for our site, we might have hot winds in summer. I'll just quickly put this on. We might have some cold winter winds. We might put from this direction cool summer breezes. And there's lots more information that we could put here, but that'll do for now. We've got some existing trees. I think there's a tree there, a tree there, there's a tree there, there's a tree there. There's trees here and here. Can you guys see? Is that coming through?
It's a bit faint.
It's a bit faint, sorry. So let's just for the purposes of this exercise, if you were wanting to create, well, what's something that we could respond to that we've identified in our site analysis that might make this site more suitable for habitat for critters and people?
Yeah, you don't want windbreak.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so we've identified that on this site we get often strong cold winds, particularly during winter from the south. So that's what these arrows are for. So we get wind coming through here, and in summer we get stinking hot winds coming from this direction. So if you were thinking making conditions nice for birds or bees, where would you put your windbreak? Yeah, you'd probably look at this kind of zone through here as some kind of a windbreak. All right. So here we have, what have we got going on here?
That's like the play park, like a park.
Yeah. And what happens along there that we've noticed?
Dog.
Yeah, so we've got little, I'm not going to draw a dog, but there's little dogs. Right? And they, it's a monkey, and people, and they kind of, so this edge here is really, it's kind of, yeah, it's exposed and it's porous and you get lots of interaction here, which is, it may be okay, but maybe if we're creating habitat in here, maybe we want to do something. So what could we do generally to kind of maybe help with that issue? If you've got lots of dogs and people coming into the habitat zone,
You can plant the yuccas, some sharp plants.
Dense shrubs.
Yeah, so we've learned some good tools, haven't we, with our plant knowledge. There's some plants that we could put. So maybe one thing that we could, you know, in your concept design, maybe along this edge, dense, prickly, sorry, I'll use black. Let's see. Dense, we'll call them spiky plants. Okay, so it could, so you just keep adding ideas to your page, and it doesn't need to be in any particular scale or whatever. We've got an existing pond here. What could we do around the pond to increase the habitat? You guys are doing ponds. Yeah, what sort of things might we have around the pond to?
So we need to put plants there that all rocks things. We actually need to put some shelter around the rim of the pond because there isn't much shelter.
Yeah.
Immediately outside the pond.
Yeah.
And plant some plants that the bugs can shelter and then escape with them.
Okay. So we could, you could just do, say, something like that. So for now, that sort of thing. And we can just save frog plants. Okay, so they want to plant densely around that. And you just keep adding that. Around here, this is, you know, maybe in this section, we want to attract, we've got little birds that live in here. Maybe we want to have some more habitat. So this could be a small bird, particularly habitat. So we know what we need to do that in that space. And you start to add these layers. So that's your concept plan. It's broad picture. It's kind of just getting a feel for what's what you could possibly do in each space, and it responds to your site analysis and your wish list and equipment information.
Why have we done it on that paper? I missed that.
Because you can layer, you can just add layers. So that's our concept layer, and I'll just rip this off. The tracing paper is really handy. So now that we've got that, if we don't like it, we just do another layer. And we change it. So you could do something completely different. And you may do that 10 times before you're finally happy with the way that it's laid out. And
would it be worth just mentioning, like before GIS, so like when you're doing farm plans and things like that, before you had computers, you'd do like one layer that marked all the water flows, mark another layer of vegetation, mark another layer that had all the fences and sheds and things like that. So you could layer it up according to what you wanted to be able to see with the same base map underneath.
And so that's, any questions about that process, that concept design stage? No? So we're starting with...
Is it possible to put the camera a bit closer to be able to read those words?
I don't think we can read those words. But,
hey, frog fire! Great, thank you. Yep, that's good.
Well done, yeah.
And if you can guess what that animal is, you win a prize.
That's a dog.
Looks like a monkey.
Monkey,
It's a monkey dog.
Up-nosed dog.
Yeah. Yeah, look, hopefully you get the idea. So then you, once you're happy with the general layout of all and the bits and pieces are going in the places that you think they'll work from a design perspective, and you've looked at the patterns.
The famous Randwick monkey terrier.
Yeah, that's the one.
This is it.
Yeah, there they go.
There it is.
It looks similar.
Yeah.
Mark 2.
So, and then we move on to the next stage. So the concept design, the great thing about designing on paper as opposed to just do it in real life, you can do as many iterations as you want. You can screw these up and throw them on the ground because you can't figure out how this thing's going to work or whatever. So that's the process. So broad brushstroke, and then you get, once you're happy with the layout, then you kind of zoom in and think about the detail of this thing. So just for example, around the pond, we've kind of got a broad idea that we're going to plant some plants around the edge of the pond that are suitable to give them protection. So now we start to think, okay, what plants are we going to use there?
Warrigal greens.
Warrigal greens, otherwise known as...
Ooh.
Yeah.
Have we done that one?
What's it?
Oh, I'm hoping you can tell. It's
Tetragonia? No,
No, that's the B, isn't it?
B, that's what I was thinking.
I should know it. You want to know on Zoom?
It is Tetragonia.
There you go.
Tetragonia tetragoniades.
Granular tetragonia. Okay. So then you think, okay, so this is where a surveyor is worth their weight in gold, because if you've got this drawing to scale, and so I guess there's a stage between the concept design and the detailed design. If you can get your picture to a scale, so then you can start to put things in at the right size, that's great. So maybe you get your tape measure out and redo your mud map really precisely, or hopefully you've got a detailed survey. But
Rosie, this might be a good time for you to ask your question about sizing.
Julian?
Okay, yeah, I mean, that kind of partly answered the question because I'm working with such a tiny, tiny space, and it's a little bit like, you know, when you buy new furniture, I often just cut out the size of the piece from a newspaper and put it in the room because the furniture just looks so much smaller in the room, in the way you buy it than in your own room. And I thought with plants, when you buy them, they're often small, but then you don't, I mean, I don't know how quickly they'll grow, to which size in my thing, how to actually sort of judge that.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
it
and
at
that's
this point that you do that?
Yeah, I think this is the point that you do that. So one way that actually a really good way to design at this stage is to kind of cut out little bits of cardboard or paper to a certain scale. So you might cut out a plant that is a meter. So scale. Does everyone, scale? How do we describe scale? Do you guys, so maybe you've
1 centimetre.
yeah. So 1 to 100 is actually quite a good scale to work with. So that means 1 centimetre on the plan represents 1 metre in real life. So does that make sense?
Yeah, my garden is much smaller than that, so I would need a different scale.
Yeah, so and that's a really good point. So you
Yeah.
could do 1 to 50, 1 to 20, depending on how much space you've got. And then you can, I mean, one way is you cut out circles and shapes and things that, like you were saying, you cut out your lounge to the right scale and put it on the, yeah.
So would that be the size of the mature plant, or?
Yeah, I would recommend going the size of the mature plant.
And how do you find that out? Just simply by Googling it and finding what size it gets to?
Yeah. Just Google it, look up your, I don't know if it says on your plant list how big they get. It gives you a broad.
Or it doesn't.
Most nurseries say.
Most of them,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Practice often.
Yeah, most plant labels will have a mature size on it. But plants are always, plants don't read the label, so, but at least it gives you a guide. Yeah, there we go. Here's one we prepared earlier. So this is an example of a design that the guys did down here. We're getting a bit of a community garden space going down there, and they got together and cut out, these are metre by metre wicking beds, and they had a whole bunch of those. This represents a dwarf fruit tree. So this is all, they measured it up and drew it out to scale. So you can see over here that's the scale. I can't read it, but I'm guessing that, oh no, that's a fence. There you go, scale, 1 centimetre is 24 centimetres. So this is a 1 to 24.
Because it's such a big site, right?
Yeah, I guess that was just what fit. So interesting. So there you go. That's a concept call. This is more of a detailed design. So it could look something like this. So however it looks and however it works for you. But this was a really good process, I think, for the group because they could move them around, shuffle them around, and
I like the use of post-it notes. That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Sticky it on.
Yeah. And then once you're happy with it, you put the glue on, and away you're locked in.
Like your fingers and it turns into a real thing.
Yeah, that's right. We got there. So there's the wish list.
Ah, cool.
Guys must-
What's the fabric then?
That's the big eucalypt in the corner.
Ah,
It's got the lamandras around it.
yeah, I love
Yeah,
that.
That's cool, isn't it?
Cute.
Yeah. So this is now a design and really interesting visual representation of what it's going to be like. So there you go. There's also, you can get software that you can design. You can get free design your own garden software, which may or may not be useful. I've never used it, but yeah, there's lots of different ways you can do this sort of stuff. But I guess the idea, moving into the detail, is you want it to have it, it's beneficial to have it to scale, and then you can start importing your specific plants and specific things into your design, and so that it all fits together. So what have we got? So we got tetragonia. Say warrigal greens.
So why warrigal greens?
So why? Yeah, so good question. Why did you choose to put a warrigal green around the pond?
Well, because you told us to. Apart from that, it's because the sand is really compacted and there's no, it's sandy, it's not a good soil or anything. So we really need a pioneer plant to get it started. And because it's such a native here, it makes sense. Plus we could pick one out of one of the wicking beds that nobody was watching and started.
And they're also good ground cover, which is fab little like.
And hopefully it will really grow.
The frogs could like hide underneath it to get to the pond and get out. So it's a cool. That idea of sitting on the ground looking up.
Yeah, cool. So, and they are really good frog habitat. We've got them all through here. And when the frogs, the little green eastern pygmy frogs, they love it. They love it. They just get in amongst it. So, warrigal greens is a hard one to give a shape and a scale because it just kind of goes. But you know, you could kind of do that. There's warrigal greens. So that's our ground cover layer. What else might you put? Let's just focus around the pond. What else would you put there? Maybe
some acacias.
Maybe some acacias. Yeah. So we've got.
There is an acacia there in the
over
there.
here. Yeah. So there is an acacia. It grows kind of that. So that's existing. What else? I think there's a. Yeah.
Or the little lamandra that's called lamandra.
Some water plants.
And some of the
Julian?
the ones in the boggy, so the between.
Yeah.
Yeah, like violet, nature violet.
Yes, nature violet. And,
yeah.
The
So,
native and West Ginger.
Yep. So maybe a Westringia fruticosa. I'll just, so you might put a Westringia here. So the tricky bit when you're drawing it like this is the layers. So we know that we want to have in the section view, you'd have your grasses, and then you might have a shrub, and then you'd have your trees. And so it gets.
Did you use like 3 bits of tracing paper and have different layers on your different ones?
Yeah, of course. Yes. Yeah, great idea. So we so you have a ground cover piece of tracing paper. There you go. That's and then you have so we're going to put a tree in here, and that's our tree layer. You don't do this when it's outside and the wind. So, and then you have your shrub layer. Brilliant idea, really good idea, because you can pull them out and it clarifies it. So hopefully that's totally clear for everybody. You get the idea. So it's to scale, and then you can start building on that detail. And that's really design process in a nutshell. Obviously, you'd keep going, just building the detail. And then you start to get your detail around the types of plants that you want. So you will have on your shrub layer, you may have 1, 2, 3, 4. How many shrubs are going to fit into this space, and then you can say, okay, we want 6 Westringia, 3. What other shrubs? Coria alba, blah, blah, blah. And then you can generate a plant list that you can go to the nursery and say, this is exactly what I want. And you know that they're going to fit because you've done it on paper, and you're not going to waste plants. And you know exactly where they go and exactly how it works. So
can I have a question?
Yeah.
Once you've done this process, do you then go to nursery and do you get mature plants, or do you get, obviously not big trees, but do you get tube stock, or do you get established? What's your advice?
good question. I don't know, are we doing? We'll be at the nursery next week, so you can.
Okay.
What's
you
chips?
can have a, okay, so
Those little ones in the very small tube.
It's a seedling.
yeah, so really good question. So we'll go there. So when you're actually ready to plant out and you go into the nursery, so you can often buy the native plants for this area in little pots, tiny little pots. It's called tube stock. The plants are small and they're about $2, $3 each. They're quite cheap. And then you can get them more advanced in bigger pots. You can get them in 100 litres, and they just get more and more expensive as you go up the pot size. Most people native plants grow really, really well from tube stock. So often what you find, if you buy a bigger plant, obviously a bigger pot, you get a bigger plant, it's got more instant impact. But typically what happens, you put the bigger plant in and it'll sit there for a while and it'll slowly grow for whatever reason. It's got something to do with the root development. After 3 years, your little tube stock that you put in is bigger than the one that you put in as a more advanced plant, as a massive generalization, but that's often what happens. So I would always recommend with your native plants, go for tube stock. You get so much more for your money, and they actually grow much better. Tube stock, you can almost, people who plant tube stock en masse, they use a crowbar and the heel of their shoe to plant, and they just kind of literally throw the tube stock in there in the hole and step on it, and generally they go. So they're pretty tough, they're cheap, and they're really good. So I would, yeah. But if part of your wish list is I want a perfectly finished mature garden next week, maybe you'd have a different kind of thing. We've got 10 minutes to go. Okay, so that's the design process. You guys on Zoom, is that? Did you have any questions around any of that?
No.
Very clear.
Yep. Okay. All right. So before you go, I'm going to throw 3 new plants at you. All right. So we'll start with our ground cover / climbing / scrambling ones. Yes. Pretty sure we haven't done this one yet. A few people here recognise it. Anyone recognise it?
Yeah, Violaceae, Hardenbergia.
Yes, Hardenbergia violacea. Beautiful spring flowering. It's pretty sure it's a legume. It's got these pea-shaped type flowers. It does get a pod, I think. It'll say on your list. Really tough, leathery, almost they look like eucalyptus leaves. And they're thick and leathery, a bit oily. So really hardy plant, and it'll just scramble around. It'll climb a fence. Yeah, really pretty tough. So yeah.
I've just planted one of those in my garden.
Fantastic. I reckon the bees would love them.
Yes, the purple flowers.
Yeah. What is it?
Hardenbergia.
Somebody type that in the chat, please.
Yeah.
Somebody type that in the chat, please.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Hardenbergia violacea, ground cover / climber. This little guy. Anyone recognise it?
That was the midgeonberry.
Yeah. So this one's a midgeonberry, otherwise known as Ostromertus dulcis. A new one. Ostromertus dulcis. The little plant grows. It's a low shrub. Grows to not much more than a metre. Tends to spread rather than grow up. Quite soft, delicate. Really attractive. It gets little fruit, a little bit like little blueberries, but they're white and speckled little things, and you can eat. Good for human habitat. Yeah, grow here. They grow quite well amongst and almost underneath other plants. So they're really understory plant, but they'll also grow in as well, but not quite as tough as some. So you'll need a little bit of protection. Seems
Would they be good for birds? Would birds eat the berries?
I think they would. Yeah. But yeah, midgeonberry, the Ostromatus dulcis. Beautiful, beautiful little thing. Okay, now up to our tree layer. Does anyone recognise this guy? It's on your plant list. It's Lorena, yeah. Water gum. It's a tree. I think
Page 33.
Page 33 or 34 in the new version.
Say it again.
Pretty tough. They use it as a street tree a fair bit. We've got them over here, and they seem really hardy. And they're flowering now, or they're just starting to flower now, and native bees absolutely love them. It's a really good bee habitat. I've seen these guys just covered in bees on a warm day. So really hardy, again, quite leathery leaves. Given that they're called water gum, I'm guessing they could grow in quite moist environments. Yep.
Could you say the name again?
Tristaniopsis lorena, water gum.
Thank you.
Gosh.
How tall is it?
How tall? About 6 or so. Yeah, it's not a massive tree. A fairly dense, deep shade that they would cast. But yeah. So, what's this one called again? Repetition. What is it? This one.
Dulcis.
Yeah. Ostromatus dulcis, midgeonberry. Awesome. All right, so tree, shrub, ground cover. That nice combination of purple and yellow. All right. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes. 14 people. I think we've got time to go around for you Zoom guys. As we normally do at the end of our session. If you could, Julian will shout out your name, and it just helps everyone kind of remember stuff that we've talked about. If you want to share one thing from the last hour that you remember that is stuck with you, Julian's new prompt.
Okay, we're going to do it in first name alphabetical order. Let's see. Hey, don't leave now. Get out of my leaving. Let's see. Some people have left. Gabriella.
Just one thing you remember. Anything. Doesn't matter what it is.
Oh, hi everyone. Look, I really liked the Hardenbergia violacea climber. Thank you. Yes, I thought that was a fantastic plant. I'm looking for a climber, and I wasn't aware of that one. So that has been, aside from everything else that you've talked about, that is my most exciting takeaway.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Right. Graeme, followed by Ian.
I thought the design process was interesting because we're actually going to do a kitchen, and I'm looking at all those things that you spoke about, and they not only does it apply to a garden, but can apply to a lot of other things. So I thought that was quite beneficial.
Yep, cool, thank you.
I think Ian's left, so Jeane, followed by Cassie.
Hi. In terms of the design process, observing wind direction was really interesting, and hot and cold wind.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Right. Cassie, followed by Kat, KP. And Cassie, thanks for typing out all the scientific names for us as we go.
That's all right. I'm terrible at remembering them. So yes, I'm trying to get better at not just relying on common names. I learned about that so I've grown Warrigal greens to eat them and forage them quite a lot because they grow everywhere in Sydney, like really amazingly. But the thing I learnt today was that they're frog habitat, not just people food.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And can you come back next week and continue your botanical name?
I'm a librarian, so that's the behind the scenes thing there. So I'm always on the info dumps there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Catherine, followed by Kit.
Yeah, I found the whole talk really useful overall, which was great. But I thought particularly during the design process, the idea of using the tracing paper just to layer things so you have a bit of flexibility and it doesn't start to look too cluttered. It's so that was really useful. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, for me as well, the layering of the papers and the layering of the learning with the summary that we did. And also the role of the surveyor. I've never really known what a surveyor does, but they do contour maps, I understand, and scale. That was interesting.
Yes, thank you.
Rosie?
Well, I have to say that probably for me the saddest thing was that I wished I'd heard your talk 20 years ago when we first moved here, because there were things growing in a spot where nothing's growing now. So obviously something was going on, and I obviously didn't sit back and observe, but we kind of ripped things out because with our European eyes, it just all looked very untidy. So yeah, so sorry, it's a little bit late now, but we've got to move forward. So I've got to do that. It's not too late. So I've got to do that whole design thing. And I think what I really like was I had not heard that about the, you know, looking at the, like mapping out even sun and shade, because our problem is with the different shades at different times of year. So I think I'll actually I've already started watching this year how the shade moves, so how much sun is actually in certain spots. And if I can get that down, that might help me more to get the right plants. And also maybe it's kind of also helped me to think a bit laterally, because we're not very good at watering in our family, but of course you need to water plants to establish them. So maybe to say if you have creepers, maybe you can plant them in a spot to the side where there is a bit more shade, so you have to water them a little bit less frequently and then let them grow towards the sunny side. Would that work?
Look, it could do, yeah. There's lots to think of. Mulch, just mulch, lots and lots of mulch. That will help with watering. So
yeah, I bought mulch last weekend following our talk, by the way.
Yeah, cool. Yes.
Thanks, Ray.
Keep chucking it down. Thank you.
Sandra, followed by Francis.
Yeah, so I learned today about the getting the plants in tubes. That was a really good point. Yeah, I've always got them in bigger bigger pots. So yeah, that was okay.
Yep, cool. Thank you.
Francis, then Judy.
Design, the wish list, and the
Sorry, you'll have to speak up, Francis.
the design, then the wish list, and then the reality check.
Yeah. Cool, thank you.
Judy, then Kim.
Yeah, and I think I guess the design, starting with a design philosophy, or kind of, you know, what I'm trying to do. Well, I'm gonna do like about 2 square meters in my front yard, so there's not a lot of space. So I'll have to really think what I need out of that.
Yep.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Kim, then Leslie Ann.
Hey everyone. So I guess I learned that I have to think where I'm going to put the stuff from my wish list. And then that the Warrigal greens are attractive for frogs. And that Casey is a librarian.
What was that last one?
That Casey is a librarian.
Librarian.
I agree.
Very important part of the design process. You know, that's for your information. What was your phrase for the information in stage?
Cool. Thanks, Kim.
And for me, the design process was particularly interesting. the initial process particularly. I've just planted some natives and I did not go through that whole process, sadly. So it will be interesting to see how it all turns out. I did it in my head, but I didn't see it on paper. So it might turn out quite differently. So thank you for that. That was very interesting.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Well, I think so. Next week we're off to the nursery. So we'll meet all of you at the nursery, but we'll take you there with us. And I guess it's the Randwick Community Nursery that the council runs. And we'll see all the different plants, how they propagate, the different sizes, and what's going to be available for you. You know, it's open to the community for people to buy. So please sign up for that. Please do your feedback form. It's always helpful. Thank you. Anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah, if you want to learn how to propagate, come next week because you can get plants for nothing, which is fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, even better. So, bye. Thanks
Bye,
for
guys.
coming.
See you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.